Just as I was swallowing. No fancy whimsy cup tonight because honestly, I forgot till just now. But it's Wednesday and we are together and I'm so excited. We was debating, talking about this before we went live. Sorry, I gotta figure out where I'm at. That's fine right there. Kind of what we're gonna do for next week because the next section in our book is Chekhov. And there's like 5 stories. So what I may do is just pull 2 of them. We'll do 1 week. Hello. Sorry guys, I get so stupid when that pops up, but it makes me happy. Anywho's will be. So we may just do like 1 week of Chekhov because he is in the book and he is a very important author. Hello, my dear sister. I miss you. Yeah, so we'll continue on in our book. I promise. We are right there. So we are about halfway through. But yeah, so since we only have one Sir Arthur Conan Doyle story, I am combining it with, because I can't get rid of anything. I am a bit of a pack rat. Yeah, I'm not a hoarder because it's not all over my house. But if you look in the right spots, there's just stuff. And one of my stuffs absolutely. You know what? I will see if I can download. Okay, so I don't know if all of you can see what just was asked. I'll see if I can download the Chiltons for that vehicle, and then I'll just have it. So, yeah, always up for requests. Always, always, always. Please, 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 if there is a short story that you absolutely adore that you are not sure is in one of my books, send it to me. But our second book tonight is Essays for English, Indiana Wesleyan University. This was one of my college books for an English class I had to take. And so there is a Henry David Thoreau story. And I underlined. Oh, now, Karen Jane, I love you. I love you. Make a car repair manual beautiful. You guys are too much. So, little side note, a little bit of context. Those are 2 of our channel's earliest, biggest supporters. One of them is the sponsor of this book. But before I distracted myself, I underlined things in the Thoreau story that we're going to read tonight. And I'm assuming it was probably for a term paper of some sort. I can't remember what, because that was longer ago than last week. So that is the plan for tonight. If you are new here, thank you so much for being here. If you are already a member of the Wolf Pack, hello again. Thank you so much for coming back. Please, 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 everybody say hey in the chat when you jump on so we can all say hey back. And it just makes my little heart happy when I can see who's here, because I can see a number of who's watching, but it may or may not be accurate. So if you say hey, then I know for sure that you're here, and I will say hey back. And everybody else will say hey too. So before we get started, I'm going to have another drink of my sparkly water. But we'll do the YouTube reminders. Like, share, subscribe, hit the notifications, hit all notifications, because you never know when I'm going to pop up. And there just might be lots to share. We're going to be super optimistic and put good vibes out into the universe that big things are um, still in the works. Still in the works. We love no cancellations. We love to kind of have a game plan, at least, if not a full detailed chain of events. Game plan is good. But tonight, our first story is by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and it is titled The Slapping Sow. Get your giggles out, because I giggled, and because I don't know what this phrase means, and it is in quotations. So let's see what he has to say. It was in the days when France's power was already broken upon the seas, and when more of her three-deckers lay rotting in the Medway than were to be found in the Brest harbor. But her frigates and corvettes still scoured the ocean, closely followed ever by those of her rival. At the uttermost ends of the earth, these dainty vessels, with sweet names of girls or of flowers, mangled and shattered each other for the honor of the 4 yards of bunting which flapped from the end of their gaffs. It had blown hard in the night, but the wind had dropped with the dawning, and now the rising sun tinted the fringe of the storm rack as it dwindled into the west and glinted on the endless crests of the long green waves. To north and south and west lay a skyline which was unbroken save by the spout of foam when 2 of the great Atlantic seas dashed each other into spray. To the east was a rocky island, jutting out into craggy points, with a few scattered clumps of palm trees and a pennant of mist streaming out from the bare, conical hill which capped it. A heavy surf beat upon the shore, and at a safe distance from it, the British 32-gun frigate Leda, Captain A.P. Johnson, raised her black, glistening side upon the crest of a wave, or swooped down into an emerald valley, dipping away to the northern under easy sail. On her snow-white quarter deck stood a stiff little brown-faced man who swept the horizon with his glass. Excuse me. Hey, Velma. Hi, sweet girl. Hi. Just lay down and go to sleep now, okay? Thank you. Mr. Wharton, he cried, with a voice like a rusty hinge. A thin, knock-kneed officer shambled across the poop to him. Yes, sir? Excuse me, guys. Got a little bit of a tickle. We'll just take care of that real quick. I've opened the sealed orders, Mr. Wharton. A glimmer of curiosity shone upon the meager features of the first lieutenant. The Leda had sailed with her consort, the Dido, from Antigua the week before, and the admiral's orders had been contained in a sealed envelope. We were to open them on reaching the deserted island of Sombrero, lying in north latitude 18, 36, west longitude 6328. Sombrero bore 4 miles to the northeast from our port bow when the gale cleared, Mr. Wharton. The lieutenant bowed stiffly. He and the captain had been bosom friends since childhood. They'd gone to school together, joined the Navy together, fought again and again together, and married into each other's families. But so long as their feet were on the poop, the iron discipline of the service struck all that was human out of them and left only the superior and the subordinate. Captain Johnson took from his pocket a blue paper, which crackled as he unfolded it. The 32-gun frigates, Leda and Dido, Captains A.P. Johnson and James Monroe, are to cruise from the point at which these instructions are read to the mouth of the Caribbean Sea, in the hope of encountering the French frigate La Gloire, which has recently harassed our merchant ships in that quarter. HM frigates are also directed to hunt down the piratical craft known sometimes as the Slapping Sow and sometimes as the Harry Hudson, which has plundered the British ships as per margin, inflicting barbarities upon their crews. She is a small brig, carrying 10 light guns with one 24-pound carronade forward. She was last seen upon the 23rd, headed to the northeast of the island of Sombrero. Signed, James Montgomery, Rear Admiral, HMS Colossus, Antigua. We appear to have lost our consort, said Captain Johnson, folding up his instructions and again sweeping the horizon with his glass. She drew away after we reefed down. It would be a pity if we met this heavy Frenchman without the Dido, Mr. Wharton, eh? The lieutenant twinkled and smiled. She has 18-pounders on the main and 12s on the poop, sir, said the captain. She carries 400 to our 231. Captain de Milan is the smartest man in the French service. Oh, Bobby boy, I'd give my hopes of my flag to rub my side up against her. He turned on his heel, ashamed of his momentary lapse. Mr. Wharton, said he, looking back sternly over his shoulder. Get those square sails shaken out and bear away a point more to the west. A brig on the port bow, came a voice from the forecastle. A brig on the port bow, said the lieutenant. The captain sprang upon the bulwarks and held on by the mizzen shrouds, a strange little figure with flying skirts and puckered eyes. The lean lieutenant craned his neck and whispered to Smeaton, the second, while officers and men came popping up from below and clustered along the weather rail, shading their eyes with their hands, for the tropical sun was already clear of the palm trees. The strange brig lay at anchor in the throat of a curving estuary, and it was already obvious that she could not get out without passing under the guns of the frigate. A long, rocky point to the north of her held her in. Oh my goodness. That is a lot of description. Keep her as she goes, Mr. Wharton, said the captain. Hardly worth our clearing for action, Mr. Smeaton, but the men can stand by the guns in case she tries to pass us. Cast loose the bow chasers and send the small-arm men to the forecastle. A British crew went to its quarters in those days with the quiet serenity of men on their daily routine. In a few minutes, without fuss or sound, the sailors were knotted around their guns. The Marines were drawn up and leaning on their muskets, and the frigate's bowsprit pointed straight for her little victim. Is it the Slapping Sow, sir? Oh, I have no doubt of it, Mr. Wharton. They don't seem to like the look of us, sir. They've cut their cable and are clapping on sail. It was evident that the brig meant struggling for her freedom. One little patch of canvas fluttered out above another, and her people could be seen working like madmen in the rigging. She made no attempt to pass her antagonist, but headed up the estuary. The captain rubbed his hands. She's making for shoal water, Mr. Wharton, and we shall have to cut her out, sir. She's a footy little brig, but I should have thought a fore and after would have been more handy. It was a mutiny, sir. Ah, indeed. Yes, sir, I heard of it at Manila. A bad business, sir. Captain and 2 mates murdered. This Hudson, or Harry Hudson as they call him, led the mutiny. He is a Londoner, sir, and a cruel villain as ever walked. His next walk will be to Execution Dock, Mr. Wharton. She seems heavily manned. I wish I could take 20 topmen out of her, but they would not be enough to corrupt the crew of the Ark, Mr. Wharton. Both officers were looking through their glasses at the brig. Suddenly, the lieutenant showed his teeth in a grin, while the captain flushed a deeper red. That's Harry Hudson on the after rail, sir. The low, impertinent blackguard. He'll play some other antics before we are done with him. Could you reach him with the long 18, Mr. Smeaton? Another cable length will do it, sir. The brig yawed as they spoke, and as she came round, a spurt of smoke whiffed out from her quarter. It was a pure piece of bravado, for the gun could scarce carry halfway. Then, with a jaunty swing, the little ship came into the wind again and shot round a fresh curve in the winding channel. The water's shoaling rapidly, sir, repeated the second lieutenant. There's 6 fathoms by the chart. 4 by the lead, sir. When we clear this point, we shall see how we lie. Ha! I thought as much. Lay her to, Mr. Wharton. Now we've got her at our mercy. At our mercy? The frigate was quite out of sight of the sea now at the head of this river-like estuary. As she came round the curve, the two shores were seen to converge at a point about a mile distant. In the angle, as near shore she could get, the brig was lying with her broadside toward her pursuer, and a wisp of black cloth streaming from her mizzen. The lean lieutenant, who had reappeared upon deck with a cutlass strapped to his side and 2 pistols rammed into his belt, peered curiously at the ensign. Is it the Jolly Roger, sir? He asked. But the captain was furious. He may hang where his breeches are hanging before I've done with him, said he. What boats will you want, Mr. Wharton? We should do it with the launch and the jolly boat. Take 4 and make a clean job of it. Pipe away the crews at once, and I'll work her in and help you with the long 18. With a rattle of ropes and a creaking of blocks, the 4 boats splashed into the water. Their crews clustered thickly into them, barefooted soldiers, stolid marines, laughing middies, and in the sheets of each, the senior officers with their stern schoolmaster faces. The captain, his elbows on the binnacle, still watched the distant brig. Her crew were tricing up and down the boarding netting, dragging round the starboard guns, knocking new portholes for them, and making every preparation for a desperate resistance. In the thick of it all, a huge man, bearded to the eyes, with a red nightcap upon his head, was straining and stooping and hauling. The captain watched him with a sour smile, and then snapping up his glass, he turned upon his heel. For an instant, he stood staring. Call back the boats, he cried in his thin, creaking voice. Clear away for action there. Cast loose those main deck guns. Brace back the yards, Mr. Smeaton, and stand by to go about when she is way enough. Round the curve of the estuary was coming a huge vessel. Uh-oh. Her great yellow bowsprit and white-winged figurehead were jutting out from the cluster of palm trees, while high above them towered 3 immense masts, with a tricolor flag floating superbly from the mizzen. Round she came, the deep blue water creaming under her forefoot, until her long, curving black side, her line of shining copper beneath and of snow-white hammocks above, and the thick clusters of men who peered over her bulwarks were all in full view. Her lower yards were slung, her ports triced up, and her guns run out, all ready for action. Oh, no. Lying behind one of the promontories of the island, the lookout men of the Galore upon the shore had seen the cul-de-sac into which the British frigate was headed, so that Captain de Millon had served the Leda as Captain Johnson had the slapping sow. Hi, Dad. But the splendid discipline of the British service was at its best in such a crisis. The boats flew back, their crews clustered aboard, they were swung up at the davits, and the fall ropes made fast. Hammocks were brought up and stowed, bulkheads set down, ports and magazines opened, The fires put out in the galley, and the drums beat quarters. Swarms of men set the head sails and brought the frigate round, while the gun crews threw off their jackets and shirts, tightened their belts, and ran out their 18-pounders, peering through the open portholes at the stately Frenchmen. The wind was very light. Hardly a ripple showed itself upon the clear blue water, but the sails blew gently out as the breeze came over the wooded banks. The Frenchmen had gone about also, and both ships were now heading slowly for the sea under fore and aft canvas, the Glore 100 yards in advance. She luffed up to cross the Leda's bows, but the British ship came around also, and the two rippled slowly on in such a silence that the ringing of ramrods as the French marines drove home their charges claimed quite loudly upon the ear. "Not much sea room, Mr. Wharton," remarks the captain. "Hey, Justin." "Not much sea room, Mr. Wharton," remarks the captain. "I've fought actions in less, sir. We must keep our distance and trust to our gunnery. She's very heavily manned, and if she got alongside, we might find ourselves in trouble. I see the shakos of soldiers aboard." Sorry, tripping on this. "I see the shakos of soldiers aboard of her. 2 companies of light infantry from Martinique. Now we have her. Hard a port, and let her have it as we cross her stern." Sorry, guys, I am not. This is all new words. Not new words. New order words. I don't know what I mean. I'm just going to keep reading. The keen eye of the little commander had seen the surface ripple, which told of a passing breeze. He had used it to dart across the big Frenchman and to take her with every gun as he passed. But, once past her, the Leda had to come back into the wind to keep out of shoal water. The maneuver brought her on to the starboard side of the Frenchman, and the trim little frigate seemed to heel right over under the crashing broadside, which burst from the gaping ports. A moment later, her topmen were swarming aloft to set her topsails and royals, and she strove to cross the Glore's bows and rake her again. The French captain, however, brought his frigate's head round, and the two rode side by side with an easy pistol shot, pouring broadsides into each other in one of those murderous duels which, could they all be recorded, would mottle our charts with blood. In that heavy tropical air, with so faint a breeze, the smoke formed a thick band round the 2 vessels. Ooh, can you picture it? From which the topmasts only protruded. Neither could see anything of its enemy save the throbs of fire into the darkness, and the guns were sponged and trained and fired into a dense wall of vapor. On the poop and forecastle, the marines, in 2 little red lines, were pouring in their volleys, but neither they nor the seamen gunners could see what effect their fire was having, nor, indeed, could they tell how far they were suffering themselves, for, standing at a gun, one could but hazily see that upon the right and the left. But above the roar of the cannon came the sharper sound of the piping shot, the crashing of ribbon planks, and the occasional heavy thud as spar or block came hurtling onto the deck. Oh my goodness. The lieutenants paced up and down the line of guns, while Captain Johnson fanned the smoke away with his cocked hat and peered eagerly out. "This is rare, Bobby," said he as the lieutenant joined him. Then, suddenly restraining himself, "What have we lost, Mr. Wharton?" "Our main topsail yard and our gaff, sir." "Where's the flag?" "Gone overboard, sir." "They'll think we've struck. Lash a boat's ensign on the starboard arm of the mizzen cross jack yard." The mizzen cross-jack yard. Yes, sir. A round shot dashed the binnacle to pieces between them. A second knocked two Marines into a bloody, palpitating mash. For a moment, the smoke rose, and the English captain saw that his adversary's heavier metal was producing a horrible effect. The Leda was a shattered wreck. Her deck was strewed with corpses. Several of her portholes were knocked into one, and one of her 18-pounder guns had been thrown right back onto her breech, pointed straight up to the sky. The thin line of Marines still loaded and fired, but half the guns were silent, and their crews were piled thickly round them. "Stand by to repel boarders," yelled the captain. "Cutlasses, lad, cutlasses!" roared Wharton. "Hold your volley till they touch," cried the captain of Marines. The huge loom of the Frenchman was seen bursting through the smoke. Thick clusters of boarders hung upon her sides and shrouds. A final broadside leapt from her ports, and the mainmast of the Leda, snapping short off a few feet above the deck, spun into the air and crashed down upon the port guns, killing 10 men and putting the whole battery out of action. An instant later, the two ships scraped together, and the starboard bower anchor of the Glore caught the mizzen chains of the Leda upon the port side. With a yell, the black swarm of boarders steadied themselves for a spring. But their feet were never to reach that blood-stained deck. From somewhere there came a well-aimed whiff of grape, and another, and another. The English Marines and seamen, waiting with cutlass and musket behind the silent guns, saw with amazement the dark masses thinning and shredding away. At the same time, the port broadside of the Frenchman burst into a roar. "Clear away the wreck!" roared the captain. "What the devil are they firing at?" "Get the guns clear," panted the lieutenant. "We'll do them yet, boys." The wreckage was torn and hacked and splintered until first one gun and then another roared into action again. The Frenchman's anchor had been cut away, and the Leda had worked herself free from that fatal hug. But now, suddenly, there was a scurry up the shrouds of the Glore, and 100 Englishmen were shouting themselves hoarse. "They're running! They're running! They're running!" And it was true. The Frenchman had ceased to fire and was intent only upon clapping on every sail that he could carry. But that shouting 100 could not claim it all as their own. As the smoke cleared, it was not difficult to see the reason. The ships had gained the mouth of the estuary during the fight, and there, about 4 miles out to sea, was the Leda's consort bearing down under full sail to the sound of the guns. Captain de Milan had done his part for one day, and presently the Glore was drawing off swiftly to the north, while the Dido was bowling along at her skirts, rattling away with her bow chasers until a headland hid them both from view. But the Leda lay sorely stricken, with her mainmast gone, her bulwark, I don't know why that word is so hard, her bulwarks shattered, her mizzen topmast and gaff shot away, her sails like a beggar's rags, and 100 of her crew dead and wounded. Close beside her, a mass of wreckage floated upon the waves. It was the stern post of the mangled vessel, and across it, in white letters on a black ground, was painted, "The Slapping Sow." "By the Lord, it was the brig that saved us," cried Mr. Wharton. "Hudson brought her into action with the Frenchman and was blown out of the water by a broadside." The little captain turned on his heel and paced up and down the deck. Already his crew were plugging the shot holes, knotting and splicing and mending. When he came back, the lieutenant saw a softening of the stern lines about his eyes and mouth. "Are they all gone?" Every man. They must have sunk with the wreck. The two officers looked down at the sinister name and at the stump of wreckage which floated in the discolored water. Excuse me. Something black washed to and fro beside a splintered gaff and a tangle of halyards. It was the outrageous ensign, and near it a scarlet cap was floating. He was a villain, but he was a Briton, said the captain at last. He lived like a dog, but by God, he died like a man. Huh. Excuse me. I guess this is why we don't pigeonhole authors in our heads. Did not read or know that he had written any seafaring stories. Hmm. I might have to think on that story. Did you guys like it? I don't know. The next one is much shorter. And as I say, this was one that I had to read for a college English class. And it kind of runs the gamut like the book does. It's just different essays compiled for different things. But yeah, this book has lived on my bookshelf since like 2011, or lived on a bookshelf since 2011. And it was hard to find a story that I thought would fit with other things. So yeah, it's a neat little book. But let's see if we can figure out why I underlined things. What are you doing? Or if Thomas is watching, why is the rum gone? I'm not sure that I want to do my Captain Jack Sparrow full out tonight. Some of you have seen him. I think it's fun to do. Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, I lost it. Okay. So our second story tonight is called Why I Went to the Woods. I love the woods. I need to get another pair of like good tromping boots. But I love the woods. Nope. Maybe if there was liquid motivation. Tonight we're being very good and we are only having water. So not tonight. But anyway, so yes, I love the woods. We have a really cool spot that I think I've talked about on here before. A nonprofit has purchased different areas of town that they've turned into preservation sites, and we've got a really cool one over here that's got a couple little spots that kind of fill up with water. There's another spot where people have built, they look like the houses for the giant creatures in Where the Wild Things Are. So yeah, some of them look like Wild Thing houses. Others look like there's one that looks like Eeyore's house. And I love going out there. I've only been out a couple times since the weather really broke, and I've gotten tacked. I have found ticks in my hair afterwards both times. So just be mindful if you're out in the woods. Long pants. tall socks, closed-toed shoes. Check yourself when you get home. Anyway, we're going to read another little story and we're going to pretend that I know why we're here. It's Wednesday. That is why we are here. This is our time together. Okay, so Why I Went into the Woods by Henry David Thoreau. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and to see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. I did not wish to live what was not life. Living is so dear. Nor did I wish to practice resignation unless it was necessary. I wanted to live deep and suck out all the marrow of life, to live so sturdily and Spartan-like as to put out all that was not life, to cut a broad swath and shave close, to drive life into a corner and reduce it to its lowest terms, and if it proved to be mean, why then to get the whole and genuine meanness of it, and publish its meanness to the world, or if it were sublime, to know it by experience, and be able to give a true account of it in my next excursion. For most men, it appears to me, are in a strange uncertainty about it, or whether it is of the devil or of God, or have somewhat hastily concluded that it is the chief end of man here to glorify God and enjoy him forever. Still, we live meanly, like ants, though the fable tells us that we were long ago changed into men. Like pygmies, we fight with cranes. It is error upon error and clout upon clout, and our best virtue has for its occasion a superfluous and inevitable wretchedness. Our life is frittered away by detail. An honest man has hardly need to count more than his 10 fingers, or in extreme cases, he may add his 10 toes and lump the rest. Simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. I say, let your affairs be as 2 or 3, and not 100 or 1,000. Instead of 1,000,000, count half a dozen. Keep your accounts on your thumbnail. In the midst of this chopping sea of civilized life, such are the clouds and storms and quicksands and 1,001 items to be allowed for. A man had to live. If he would not founder and go to the bottom and make his port at all, by dead reckoning, and he must be a great calculator indeed who succeeds. Simplify, simplify. Instead of 3 meals a day, if it be necessary to eat but 1. Instead of 100 dishes, 5. And reduce other things in proportion. Our life is like a German confederacy, made up of petty states, with its boundary forever fluctuating, so that even a German cannot tell you how it is bounded at any moment. The nation itself, with all its so-called internal improvements, which, by the way, are all external and superficial, is just an unwieldy and overgrown establishment, cluttered with furniture and tripped up by its own traps, ruined by luxury and heedless expense, by want of calculation and a worthy aim, as the 1,000,000 households in the lands. And the only cure for it, as for them, is in a rigid economy, a stern and more Spartan simplicity of life and elevation of purpose. It lives too fast. Men think that it is essential that the nation have commerce, and export ice, and talk through a telegraph, and ride 30 miles an hour without a doubt, whether they do or not. 30 miles an hour. But whether we should live like baboons or like men is a little uncertain. We do not get our sleepers and forge rails and devote days and nights to the work, but go to tinkering upon our lives to improve them. Who will build railroads? And if railroads are not built, how shall we get to heaven in season? But if we stay at home and mind our business, who will want railroads? We do not ride on the railroad, it rides upon us. Did you ever think what those sleepers are that underlie the railroad? Each one is a man, an Irishman or a Yankee man. The rails are laid on them, and they are covered with sand, and the cars run smoothly over them. They are sound sleepers, I assure you. And every few years, a new lot is laid down and run over, so that if some have the pleasure of riding on a rail, others have the misfortune of being ridden upon. And when they run over a man that is walking in his sleep, a supernumerary sleeper in the wrong position, and wake him up, they suddenly stop the cars and make a hue and cry about it as if this were an exception. I am glad to know that it takes a gang of men for every 5 miles to keep the sleepers down and level in their beds as it is, for this is a sign that they may sometimes get up again. Why should we live with such hurry and waste of life? We are determined to be starved before we are hungry. Men say that a stitch in time saves nine, and so they take 1,000 stitches today to save nine tomorrow. As for work, we haven't any of any consequence. We have the St. Vitus's dance and cannot possibly keep our heads still. If I should only give a few pulls at the parish bell rope, as for a fire, that is, without setting the bell, there's hardly a man on his farm in the outskirts of Concord, notwithstanding that press of engagements, which was his excuse so many times in the morning, nor a boy, nor a woman, I might almost say, but would forsake all and follow that sound, not mainly to save property from the flames, but if we will confess the truth, much more to see it burn, since burn it must, and we, be it known, did not set it on fire, or to see it put out, and have a hand in it, if that is done as handsomely. Yes, even if it were the parish church itself. Hardly a man takes a half-hour's nap after dinner, but when he wakes, he holds his head up and asks, what's the news? As if the rest of mankind had stood his sentinels. Some give directions to be waked every half hour, doubtless for no other purpose. And then, to pay for it, they tell what they have dreamed. After a night's sleep, the news is as indispensable as the breakfast. Pray tell me anything new that has happened to a man anywhere on this globe. And he reads it over his coffee and rolls. That a man has had his eyes gouged out this morning on the Wachito River, never dreaming the while that he lives in the dark, unfathomed mammoth cave of this world, but and has but the rudiment of an eye himself. For my part, I could easily do without the post office. I think that there are very few important communications made through it. To speak critically, I never received more than one or two letters in my life. I wrote this some years ago, that were worth the postage. The penny post is, commonly, an institution through which you seriously offer a man that penny for his thoughts, which is so often safely offered in jest. And I am sure that I never read any memorable news in a newspaper. If we read of one man robbed, or murdered, or killed by accident, or one house burned, one vessel wrecked, or one steamboat blown up, or one cow rode over on the Western Railroad, or one mad dog killed, or one lot of grasshoppers in the winter, we never need read of another. One is enough. If you are acquainted with the principle, what do you care for myriad instances and applications? To a philosopher, all news, as it is called, is gossip, and they who edit and read it are old women over their tea. Yet not a few are greedy after this gossip. There was a rush, as I hear, the other day at one of the offices to learn the foreign news by the last arrival, that several large squares of plate glass belonging to the establishment, oh my gosh, that several large squares of plate glass belonging to the establishment were broken by the pressure. News which I seriously think a ready wit might write a 12-month or 12 years beforehand with sufficient accuracy. As for Spain, for instance, if you know how to throw in Don Carlos and the Infanta, and Don Pedro and Seville and Granada, from time to time in the right proportions, they may have changed the names a little since I saw the papers, and serve up a bullfight when other entertainments fail, it will be true to the letter, and give us a good idea of the exact state or ruin of things in Spain, as the most succinct and lucid reports under this head in the newspapers. And as for England, almost the last significant scrap of news from that quarter was the Revolution of 1649. And if you have learned the history of her crops for an average year, you never need attend to that thing again, unless your speculations are of a merely pecuniary character. If one may judge who rarely looks into the newspapers, nothing new ever does happen in foreign parts, a French Revolution not excepted. What news? How much more important to know that which is. Oh, sorry, guys. Try again. How much more important to know what that is which was never old? What news? How much more important to know what that is which was never old? Okay. Shams and illusions are esteemed for soundless truths, while reality is fabulous. If men would steadily observe realities only, and not allow themselves to be deluded, life, to compare it with such things as we know, would be like a fairy tale in the Arabian Nights entertainments. If we respected only what is inevitable and has a right to be, music and poetry would resound along the streets. When we are unhurried and wise, we perceive that only great and worthy things have any permanent and absolute existence, that petty fears and petty pleasures are but the shadow of the reality. This is always exhilarating and sublime. By closing the eyes and slumbering, and consenting to be deceived by shows, men establish and confirm their daily life of routine and habit everywhere, which still is built on purely illusory foundations. Children who play life discern its true law and relations more clearly than men who fail to live it worthily, but who think that they are wiser by experience, that is, by failure. I have read it in a Hindu book that there was a king's son who, being expelled in infancy from his native city, was brought up by a forester, and growing up to maturity in that state, imagined himself to belong to a barbarous race with which he lived. One of his father's ministers, having discovered him, revealed to him who he was, uh, and the misconception of his character was removed, and he knew himself to be a prince. So soul, continues the Hindu philosopher, from the circumstances in which it is placed, mistakes its own character until the truth is revealed to it by some holy teacher, and then it knows itself to be Brahm. I perceive that we inhabitants of New England live this mean life that we do because our vision does not penetrate the surface of things. We think that it is, which appears to be. If a man should walk through this town and see only the reality, where, think you, would the mill dam go to? If he should give us an account of the realities he beheld there, we should not recognize the place in his description. Look at the meeting house, or a courthouse, or a jail, or a shop, or a dwelling house, and say what that thing really is before a true gaze, and they would all go to pieces in your account of them. Men esteem truth remote, in the outskirts of the system, behind the farthest star, before Adam, and after the last man. In eternity, there is indeed something true and sublime. But all these times and places and occasions are now and here. God himself culminates in the present moment and will never be more divine in the lapse of all of the ages. And we are enabled to apprehend at all what is sublime and noble only by the perpetual instilling and drenching of the reality that surrounds us. The universe constantly and obediently answers to our conceptions. Whether we travel fast or slow, the track is laid for us. Let us spend our lives in conceiving them. The poet or the artist never yet had so fair and noble a design, but some of his posterity at least could accomplish it. Let us spend one day as deliberately as nature, and not be thrown off the track by every nutshell and mosquito's wing that falls on the rails. Let us rise early and fast, or breakfast gently and without perturbation. Let company come and let company go. Let the bells ring and the children cry, determined to make a day of it. Why should we knock under and go with the stream? Let us not be upset and overwhelmed in that terrible rapid and whirlpool called a dinner, situated in the meridian shallows. Weather this danger and you are safe, for the rest of the way is downhill. With unrelaxed nerves, with morning vigor, sail by it, looking another way, tied to its mast like Ulysses. If the engine whistles, let it whistle till it's hoarse for its pains. If the bell rings, why should we run? We will consider what kind of music they are like. Let us settle ourselves and work and wedge our feet downward through the mud and slush of opinion and prejudice and tradition and delusion and appearance, that alluvion which covers the globe, through Paris and London, through New York and Boston and Concord, through church and state, through poetry and philosophy and religion, till we come to a hard bottom and rocks in place, which we can call reality, and say, this is, and no mistake. And then begin. Below freshet and frost and fire, a place where you might found a wall or a state, or set a lamppost safely, or perhaps a gauge, not a nilometer, but a realometer, that future ages might know how deep a freshet of shams and appearances had gathered from time to time. If you stand right, fronting and face to a fact, you will see the sun glimmer on both its surfaces, as if it were a cimeter, and feel its sweet edge dividing you through the heart and marrow. And so you will happily conclude your mortal career. Be it life or death, we crave only reality. If we are really dying, let us hear the rattle in our throats and feel cold in the extremities. If we are alive, let us go about our business. Time is but the stream I go a-fishing in. I drink at it. But while I drink, I see the sandy bottom and detect how shallow it is. Its thin current slides away, but eternity remains. I would drink deeper. Fish in the sky, whose bottom is pebbly with stars. I cannot count one. I know not the first letter of the alphabet. I've always been regretting that I was not as wise as the day I was born. The intellect is a cleaver. It discerns and rifts its way into the secret of things. I do not wish to be any more busy with my hands than is necessary. My head is hands and feet. I feel all my best faculties concentrated in it. My instinct tells me that my head is an organ for burrowing, as some creatures use their snout and forepaws. And with it I would mine and burrow my way through these hills. I think that the richest vein is somewhere hereabouts. So by the divining rod and thin rising vapors, I judge. And here I will begin to mine. So not stories tonight, guys. Or at least not our usual stories. I'm sorry, I'm so yawny and I don't really know why. But thank you for hanging out with me. We will do Chekhov next week. I'll try to put a poll with all of the titles. So if you guys know the stories, go ahead and help me pick out a couple. And we'll do this all again next Wednesday. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Don't forget tomorrow night, KT 3.14 channel. We got some Reddit stories. We got some coworker Reddit stories. And then tomorrow night is the Hallowed Hearth podcast. We have a guest. We're going to talk about a spooky place. And yeah. So I'm going to jump off of here and try to put my laundry away. It's only 8:30. I've still got time to put my laundry away. All right. I'll be responsible. All right. Talk me into it. I'll see you guys next week. Love you.